get to. If we can do 2:30.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone.
Then again, we have, before you do that, somebody's coming to speak to us for just 3 minutes. Where is he? After the panel. Okay. Okay, after the panelists have been called on the podium, we have somebody that will give us a message for just 3 minutes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joshua Yari Garba with GIZ, particularly Nigerian Energy Support Program and also the Project Development Program of GIZ. Without wasting time, I will call on the panelists. I will start with my sister. If you're Mamalu, is she already in the hall? Okay, I've been looking for you. You're welcome. She is the co-founder of Clean Technology Hub and also an expert, energy access expert and climate action champion. She has over 23 years of experience supporting energy access across the country and even Africa. You're welcome. I will also call on Dr. Patrick Tolani. Dr. Patrick, he was just seated here. Okay, when he comes back, I will reintroduce him again. Dr. Victor Richard Osu, are you in the hall, please? Dr. Richard? Okay. Dr. Shegun Adaju is the founder and not CEO now, is Chief Energizing Officer of Consistent Energy Limited, because you'll be tempted to say CEO. It's actually CEO, but this time around it's not executive, it's energizing. He has so many years of experience, especially in the energy sector. Sir, you're welcome. Okay, Dr. Patrick is back. Dr. Patrick Tolani, you're welcome, sir. He is the Chief Executive Officer of Community Energy Social Enterprise Limited, and he has well over 10 years of experience providing energy in rural communities and engaging with rural communities. You're welcome to the podium, to the stage, sir. I thought we were fighting now. So this session is the easiest way out of all this struggle of lack of energy. Then we have Mr. Chinedu Ama. Is he already around? Oh, okay. I think he's also on his way. So before I hand over to Ifam Amalu, I would like to, they said I should just give you 3 minutes, sir. And I will time you, sir. All right, sir.
Thank you very much. Please, I consider this a special privilege to address the conference before I leave. I have been in the industry for a long time. I have listened from the beginning to all the presentations and the exchanges. There were times when we saw fireworks. They were all good for the growth of the industry. I want to speak just on 2 important areas. We have seen that the meter deployment numbers, compared with the customer numbers, they are very low. You cannot be selling a commodity and you don't have an effective way of accounting for the commodity you are selling. Metering. What are the constraints? Fund inflow. There is no way we can do it from fund generated internally. Even the franchise owners don't have that capacity. We have had them speak. They don't have the capacity because they are over indebted. So there must be a way to attract even customers today. More than 80% of them are ready to fund deployment of their own meters. It's a fact. Again, on the metering, meter numbers may be there, but are those meters effective? A good number of them, from my own personal experience and what I have seen from my investigation, a good number of them are compromised. Even the prepaid meters, a number of them are compromised. And again, talking about funding, meter deploy, a number of them are compromised. Do you know, if you can improve on cash collection efficiency by 10 to 15% across board, you will bring in more than 2 to 3 billion naira extra every single month. It's not impossible. It's doable. Unfortunately, not all the franchise owners are here. But talking to the conference, I want to suggest, after all the discussions and engagements, we should try and set up small groups that will distill all that we have discussed and come up with a position paper for the government. Finally, on funding. You cannot, we were told initially, I was there when the presentation was done, we had the impression that the investors were coming with technical foreign partners, bringing along with them dollars. It didn't come. Yes, it didn't come. There is no way you can run this kind of utility effectively and efficiently without inflow, without capital investment. Some of them that borrowed locally borrowed money on short-term basis for long-term investment. Electricity industry, you don't recover your fund in a very short period of time. And I want to say, I'm sorry, it's like I'm rushing. I want to thank contributors for their interventions. And I want to insist and advise the organizers, let us not end it all here. We would have done only about 25% of the work. Let us come together in small groups, like I said, and articulate the way forward. Electricity improvement in Nigeria is fundamental, is an imperative to economic growth. We are, after 10 years, gentlemen and ladies, and we are still complaining, we must part ways with lamentation. Lamentation, we shall start singing praises of ourselves and our customers. Thank you very much. Did I spend 3 minutes?
Thank you very much, sir. I'm sure the Secretariat will note the suggestions and the recommendations. Now I call the presenter to present her paper. Ifimalu is the co-founder of Clean Technology Hub and also the Nigerian country director of Power for All. And as a director, she has been instrumental in improving and promoting energy access and climate change mitigation and adaptation here in Nigeria. You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, good afternoon. We're the only thing standing between you and lunch, and we will try and make this smart and nimble very quickly. So, my name is Ifoma Malo. I'm co-founder Clean Technology Hub. We're a hybrid hub focused on energy access, climate change, and sustainable entrepreneurship. We're trying to take a look at how far the renewable energy sector has come, the energy access sector has come over time. And one of the things that I think stands out for us is the enormous potential in excess of about 1.6 trillion in terms of demand that we see in the energy access sector. But even though there is that latent demand, there is not enough energy to supply the existing and future demand. So if you look at the statistics that is on the screen now, you'll see that we have a 24.6% penetration for rural energy access, and it's 83.9% for urban. And yet, despite this, we still have a 78% point around on the served population, so people who have power but are getting only very few amounts of power a day. And so what we now do in the energy access sector is to bridge that huge gap between what is supplied and what is demanded. And so since the grid isn't able to get to everybody, we have off-grid solutions. The off-grid sector is there as a hybrid to sort of fill in that gap that exists between demand and supply. And so this is a slide that talks about the Nigerian power sector history. I won't go through it in detail, but there are several legal backing, policy backing, roadmaps, commercial viability documents that exist that gives us the pathway to energy access optimization. And all of this started sometime in 2015, actually. Sorry, 1 second. 2005, when we had the ESPRA passed, and also subsequently having a lot of iteration in terms of policy and legal documents and frameworks to guide the renewable energy sector. This is also just talking about the amount of legislation and policy documents that is underpinning the sector. The most recent one being the Electricity Act of 2023 that sort of states how the power sector is going to be structured going forward from generation, transmission, and distribution. All of the others, I think, are already well known to the participants in the room. So, again, still talking about the policy framework, the ESPRA Act, and then the National Electric Power Policy of 2001. So here is just giving us a sense of what the global landscape and outlook is. We have an installed capacity of renewable energy sources that stands at least at about 3.4 terawatts as of 2023. And while Nigeria as a country has made substantial progress in adopting renewable energy through mini-grid, standalone home solar systems, we have a combined installed capacity of about 2,000 megawatts, mainly around the large hydro, and which makes up about 13% of the country's energy generation. So this gives you an idea of where our current energy mix stands. You can still see that we're very fossil fuel dependent, and with hydroelectric providing that bridge between fossil and renewable energy. And then you can just see about 10% around solar, wind, and biomass, taking the rest of the energy mix. Now, here are some of the challenges we see around energy transition. First of all, I have to put a caveat and say that it's great that a lot of the grid sector folks spoke earlier. But I think it's also important for us to note that those of us in the renewable energy sector are not anti-grid, and that we're not even anti the sort of energy mix that will let us meet our optimal. We're just saying that there is a whole lot of gap in Nigeria that we know that the grid isn't going to meet, and that was sort of confirmed by the different panels that were held from 2 days ago to today. And so while we're trying to move to an energy transition future, along with the rest of the globe, noting that the government of Nigeria has signed us up during the Paris Agreement to a lot of decarbonization targets, and then also through our energy transition plan to reach certain targets by 2060. Here are the challenges along the way. We continue to have intermittency and upfront costs and policy and regulatory barriers and integration challenges and public awareness around what it would take for us to move into an energy transition future. I think it's also important to say that we all agree that the energy transition would happen, whether we like it or not, as Africans or Nigerians. The question is, how are we playing in that sector, and how are we defining what Nigeria's potential is? Nigeria has defined its transition fuel as gas. And as a result, we see that there is now a focus on, how to harness gas to power. But we understand that even at that there are still going to be gaps. And this is where the renewable energy and energy access sector comes in, because that gas is not going to be available, not for the near future or even the midterm. So these are very long-term targets that the government has set. So how are we trying to address the energy gaps and also do the energy transition? Well, we're hoping that there will be more promotion of renewable energy projects by governments and private sector, especially in rural and peri-urban communities across the country. We're looking at technical innovations such as improved energy storage solutions and smart grid technologies. The technologies that exist are iterating very quickly. I was in Korea just this summer, and it was amazing to see the type of battery storage, the storage systems that they're already producing in Southeast Asia. We also need to encourage more investments in renewable energy through tax incentives and subsidies. and also allow for public-private partnerships that can help drive and catalyze international funding mechanisms, and also look at our regulatory frameworks and see how we can deploy them to facilitate grid integration and provide feed-in tariffs and simplify the permitting process for especially the renewable energy sector. And so here are some of the threats we identified. We know that there's political resistance or lack of commitment to renewables. Some of the signals that a lot of our international partners are getting is that Nigeria might be shifting away from our decarbonization targets and renewable energy targets. There's an economic downturn globally. Nigeria is not the only place where that's happening. So this is impacting their ability to attract investments and funding. And then the technology challenges and delays, especially around supply chain. Being able to import solar systems into the country continues to be a challenge for a lot of the solar commercial deployers and developers. And then, but this provides opportunities for us as well to have enhanced energy security by deploying renewable energy. Looking at job creation, there's some numbers I saw. I think Power for All, an organization I used to work for before, did a Powering Jobs report and talked about numbers that are being created using renewable energy sources. And those numbers are more than double the GDP of some of the traditional power sources that we have in the country. So there is potential to employ more people using renewable energy across the country. And then there's advancements in energy storage and grid management, and I think Nigeria has significant opportunities to play in those roles. Lastly, I'm finishing up now. The main challenge that is faced by the decentralized renewable energy market is partly because of the economic crisis that we have. We continue to have high import duties on batteries, and also even in charge controllers and all of that. It makes it difficult for people to acquire these systems. And as a result, the upfront costs continue to be so high. So we need to get to a stage where it is affordable for everybody and that people have a way where they can buy these systems readily without having to wait for a long time for it to be ordered from outside the country. I already spoke about this in the other slide. I'll skip this. So I think it's also important to highlight that the days of depending only on donor finance is slowly coming to a close. We see that as countries are facing global recessions, they contract, and then they close up, and then the donor money doesn't come as much as it's coming. We're all feeling that pinch now. So as there's now limited opportunities for financing, we're leveraging or leaning very closely to the private sector to see how much more they can put into the energy asset sector to make sure that we're electrifying very quickly and getting people into paying for electricity as well. And I'll come to that in a minute. There is also the whole VC market, but what we have been discussing with some of our colleagues in RIAN is that this is not a sector that is patient enough for the renewable energy sector. So as a result, there's all sorts of mechanisms and conversations that are being put in place to see if we can tweak the VC model into a hybrid model that will serve the sector, because they do need very patient capital, and that's not available with the current VC model. Lastly, I needed to also mention that Nigeria so far is considered the biggest solar market, renewable energy market across sub-Saharan Africa. And so this is why we see that despite all of the economic indices that were previously mentioned, there is still a huge interest in our country and in our market, and that there is an opportunity for us to scale very quickly. And I said this as an example because what's happening in the sector now is that a lot of the developers are partnering with different ecosystems, from agri to health to education, to deploy systems that would help people increase their livelihoods and be able to pay for the electricity that they use. So the time is now, the market is right, and through this presentation, we're going to invite you to listen to our panel and think about how you can come work with us, support us, invest in the renewable energy sector so that we're partners with the grid sector as well. Thank you very much.
Apologies, please. Oh, one of them is working now. This one, right? Okay. So I should use this. Okay. So I should use this. All right. Thank you very much. It's very encouraging to know that despite the challenges and also the risks involved in investing in renewable energy, we are still moving on. I see 13%, and I remember we have a vision 30-30-30. Where we want at least 30% of the energy mix by 2030 to be from renewables. And I'm glad that we are moving on. I was in Kano last week. I know that I met someone, and I was telling him about the energy transition. And he said, I hope it's not going to be one of those documents that you guys just produce and just forget. And I'm hoping the government of Nigeria, like Ife mentioned, in COP26, right? Made a commitment. We all made a commitment, especially in terms of carbon neutrality by 2060. And gradually we are moving there. 5 key sectors, critical sectors were considered. I know power was considered, transportation, industry, oil and gas, and also cooking were considered. Now I'll come to you, Dr. Tolani. You have been working with the rural community, and you have done a lot there, engaging with the communities and other people. Now, we want to hear from you. We want you to share with us your experiences with the communities in terms of the market, some of your challenges, financing, how you were able to come about it, and some of the hurdles you have had to have. I know discos are here with the discos.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I think if you permit me, I will start on a kind of theoretical framework to introduce what I wanted to talk about. And that is what I'll call this sector failure theory. And those of us who are familiar with this theory understand that one of the reasons that we have partnerships is because it's been identified that there are sector failures across board. And that is exactly what I've been listening to in the last 3 days of this conference, that the public sector is not achieving the desired results. The private sector is also not doing it, and neither is the third sector. And I'm happy that Ife, who made the presentation, invited all parties to join the renewable energy sector in moving things forward in the country. Now, why do we need renewable energy? Indeed, of course, it's going to be part of our transition plan, absolutely. But indeed, this is the sector that also has a little bit of a capacity to assist in bridging the gap and meeting some of those sectoral failures that I've already mentioned. And to me, that is not just theoretical. It's important because that's what has happened. Now, I have to admit, we started the journey, my company is called Community Energy Social Enterprise Limited. That name was brought from the United Kingdom, where you even have redundancy of about 65,000 megawatt of electricity. They were still embracing community energy using renewable energy sources. So that was where I started from. But for many years, after qualifying as a mini-grid developer, it took us nearly 5 years to get the funding to be able to deploy and commission 4 mini-grids just less than a month ago. Now, what is the importance of the sector failure that I've mentioned? Very importantly, we had the capacity, we wanted to do the job, we had the local communities, but we didn't have the money. And of course, just like it's been experienced, we depended on international investors at the beginning, taking into account that I've lived in Europe for about 23 years. I thought it was going to be easy to bring resources or finance to Nigeria. At the end of the day, that did not happen. So what happened? Now, at the end of the day, there is an oil company. They have been looking at how to go into renewables. They didn't know what to do about it for nearly 3 years. And somebody then introduced me to them. I said, look, if you speak to this person, they have the capacity, they have the integrity, and if you give finance to them, you will get your result. And, well, with a little bit of trepidation, they financed our first set of mini-grids. Now, what are the lessons from that? Number one, this has been an oil company that has existed for more than 20 years. Their governance, their control systems, the way they do their businesses had impacted massively on the way we now run our company and the way we also do our business. So if we want to be honest to ourselves, and that's where I'm going to end, we need all the parties to really come together and look at the opportunity and the low-hanging fruit that renewable energy can provide. For example, if you recall, even the energy, the Electricity Act itself now makes it mandatory for both the GENCOs, the DISCOs, to mainstream renewable energy into their offering. But for me, I'm proposing that it's not just a legal obligation. We shouldn't view it just as a legal obligation, but there are opportunities that we can look at. For example, Dr. Rowan was speaking yesterday here about creating clusters. So what is so difficult? I've spoken with Sahara Energy, I've spoken with Port Harcourt. Why don't you embrace the opportunity of some of the renewable energy companies to come and work with you? Let's deploy and generate more for you. Let's create clusters where things can work. I'm aware that Abuja Disco got some resources, some time from USTDA to carry out a feasibility study in that respect, but I don't know what has happened to it. But those are the ways forward. Let's all identify what renewable energy can bring to the table in the short and medium term to improve energy access. I understand the importance of metering, but if you meter and energy supply still does not change, if efficiency does not increase, it's a total waste of time. That's where I'm going to end it for now.
Thank you, Dr. Taladi. Maybe before I come back to Ife and Dr. Adaju, maybe I just go online to discuss with Dr. Richard. Dr. Richard, you are there? Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, thank you very much.
If you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. So in her presentation, she made mention of some of the gaps, especially in terms of transitioning through power, but then we need to industrialize. We cannot develop in darkness. What do you think, what role do you think gas will play vis-a-vis renewable energy?
Thank you very much. And I apologize that uh, because where I am right now, it's not somewhere I can actually my camera on. So apologies for that, because we're about 3 hours backwards from Nigeria. But back to your question, I just want to say thank you to my co-panelists, and well done to Ifimal also for that brilliant presentation. Um, you look at renewable energy and you look at what we have today, and then you look at gas, and gas becomes that that fruit that we know that we have abundantly, but we've not been able to make it as strong as the oil that we have. So I think for me personally, I think gas is the way we start with that transition, that energy transition we are talking about, and it has a lot of applicability to industry. And as we see today, as we are today, 80% of our gas is actually for generating power. So why don't we, push that through deeply and start thinking about how do we make this gas very, very popular as part of the transition fuel. And I know that yes, when we talk about gas and oil or fossil fuel, there's always that thought about climate change. And that thought about climate change, yes, it's a problem, yes, but today the developed countries are still using gas. And if they're still using gas, they are using that to further industrialize their country. So why can't we do the same thing in Africa or even here in Nigeria? But if you look at the three things concerning energy, you're talking about security, gas gives you that. You're talking about access, gas gives you that, both from a basic and productive use. And then you talk about climate change. Gas is also less pollutant. But guess what? There is a decarbonization measure that you can start thinking about gas, and that is using carbon capture and utilization and storage. And that is what Nigeria is doing today. I know that Dr. Joy of APGC is aware of carbon capture that is being driven by the federal government, and I think that is a way of using gas to drive your power. So decarbonize your facilities using carbon capture, and then get your gas out there to drive that means. So what you've done is that you have actually been able to achieve three things: your security, because Nigeria has gas and is not as well expensive as the renewable energy, even though yes, at the end of the day, our transition is towards the renewable energy or green energy. And then the access is there, both for basic and basic. We're talking about household, then productive industrialization. And that is very key. And then climate change, you are decarbonizing it using carbon capture. Thank you.
Okay, maybe a follow-on question. We have about 78% underserved based on the statistics we have just seen. And we are talking about gas. What percentage of our energy mix do you think gas will take? Because we see renewable energy taking up to 30% by 2030. By 2030, what do you see? Because it needs also a lot of investments. Do we have the capital to be able to invest in that, which is cheaper, to go through renewable energy or to go through gas?
My candid opinion, thanks for that question. Thank you. My candid opinion is that gas will be very predominant even till 2030. So numbers, yes, we can always put numbers. We keep saying 30% renewable energy. I am not biased about renewable energy. I am a renewable energy person, but I'm being practical. For the past 10, 12 years, we've been talking about renewable energy. The same challenges we face every single time. We keep looking at that. And guess what again? It's we that do the policy. We make the policy for the government all the time. We do that for states, we do that for the government, and then we start having that back and forth. Now, the thing about renewable energy, brilliant. And I want us to look at that and push forward with that. However, when it comes to gas, we have those infrastructures, they're there. And those infrastructures, we only need to look inwards from a government context and private sector context. Look inwards and see how do we get this gas out there. So for me, 2030, I can't put a number, but it should be higher than that 30% that is being consigned to renewable energy. Why not 60-70%? Yes, for that. Then you start decarbonizing it start decarbonizing it from 2030 to 2040, where you now start having what we call the low carbon fuels coming from gas. And low carbon fuels, you're talking about the blue hydrogen, blue methanol, and then you can now start decarbonizing further to your net zero by 2060 by using sources of for example, biomass, to start thinking of generating methanol or even hydrogen from renewable energy sources. So that's a pathway that will be very crucial to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe I come back to Dr. Adaju before I ask Ify the question I have here for her. She talked about some of the challenges in terms of implementing especially renewable energy projects. And one key thing that she mentioned is importation of RE technologies. I know as president of RIAN, you were part of the team that worked on streamlining the importation procedure for solar. But then customs, they are saying economic development of the country or revenue generation. What do you think? And what has it been able to yield in terms of the effort that you have put into this?
Thank you so much. Let me just one or two interventions, and then I would maybe come to the question. Brilliant presentation, Ify, always, and of course the panelists also, including Dr. Victor, my very good friend. Number one. If it were possible for Nigeria to power itself 100% with gas, I mean, I believe in gas also, right? I probably would have also, queued behind gas because we have it in abundance and we're even rather wasting it, flaring. But the issue is the infrastructure. Does it exist? Do we have the current capacity to take the gas to where it is needed to generate power? That's the issue. Number two, grid also. If Nigeria could power itself through the grid, I would have been very happy. Maybe I would have been deploying energy now and plugging to the grid. So there are also constraints in that area. So it's as if you have a team of grid versus non-grid. Gas versus renewables, no. There is, for a nation, I read a book about energy security also. And the definition of energy security is that, look, why would you rely on one source of energy? That's what happened to Europe during Russia-Ukraine. So that it's only if you're powering yourself 100% gas, there's no security. Because the day somebody wants to check what's in that pipeline, that, we keep hearing of pipeline vandalization. Maybe they are checking that. What's inside that pipeline? Maybe it's money. I want to collect it. And if they break that pipeline, then the whole nation will be grounded. So the idea of energy security is that have a mix. So that when this one is low, you can shift to this. And that's what we are having in our homes. You have grid, you have a generator, some will have inverter. Many people are having solar now. You're having like 4 or 5 sources. That's the security we're talking about. All right? So it won't be advisable to say, look, plug 100% on gas, even if you can. But Nigeria, we have excessive gas, but we have not been able to take that gas to generate power effectively. Also, gas has been seen as the energy transition for Nigeria, or the transition fuel for Nigeria. I totally also believe. I mean, I'm one of those stakeholders that also, involved in crafting both the NDC sectoral plan, so I believe in gas, right? But renewables, from my experience in the last 10 years, has gradually been penetrating in Nigeria. Maybe the challenge might be statistics. How do we really have all the full statistics? We don't, because people don't, aggregating all those numbers is a bit challenging. But each time I'm flying to anywhere in Nigeria and I'm descending, one thing I do is just to look at rooftops. I'm beginning to see more panels on rooftop when I'm getting down into Lagos than 5 years ago. Even in my estate, everywhere in Nigeria, you are seeing panels springing up gradually. If we're able to collate those numbers, we'll be amazed at the quantum of energy that Nigerians have deployed, including the over 200 mini grids that have been deployed in Nigeria. All right? Now, if it's possible, time permits, Dr. Patrick has talked about mini grid. I'll talk about SMEs, what some SMEs have done in Nigeria. Now, in terms of the incentives and tariffs, yes, there has been provisions for this. The Nigerian Renewable Energy Efficiency Policy 2016 actually made provision for incentives, waivers, taxes that, for renewables, but it hasn't been implemented. I used to say that maybe one man stood against it, but please let me move away from that now. We have a new Comptroller General, we have an opportunity to engage. And even the new Electricity Act also made provision. In fact, if you listen to the chairman of the Tax Reform Committee, one of those he's pushing for is that, and we are going to stay on it. Now, and I'll close with this. On the question, Custom is saying Nigeria needs money to implement many things. You guys are asking us to give you waivers. That it doesn't make any sense. FCDO did a study. I was one of those consultants, a modeling that shows that, look, number one, what is the percentage of VAT and taxes on solar compared to the general revenue of Nigeria? It's less than 1%. It's 0. So even if you pull it out, it will not substantially affect the revenue of Nigeria. That's number one. Number two, it was also proving that if you give waivers on solar system, the model, so if you give 1 naira or 1,000 naira waiver to Dr. Tolani, if he deploys the solar system, he's able to generate income and revenue that you can tax that will give you 4,000 naira. There's a model that's been developed. So that means if you are giving a waiver of 1,000, you can generate revenue through taxes, corporate tax, payee, and the rest, 4,000. So it makes economic sense to say, let me give this waiver because I will increase employment, productivity, and ultimately Nigerian government will get 4,000 naira. That's what we call, is it penny wise, pound foolish? You give that penny out, you get a pound back. That is proven, a model of what has happened in Indonesia, in some other countries, right? So this is but we are going to continue to push to say, let these waivers happen. You can get more revenue. By the time you give that 1 naira tax waiver, you will get 4 naira. It's proven already.
Okay, thank you. I was almost interrupting you to tell you that Federal Ministry of Finance and Customs are saying they don't know that there's a provision in the NRIP on incentives, especially as it relates to importation.
It's very clear. I mentioned the Nigerian Renewable Energy Policy of 2016, signed.
But they are saying it's not in the fiscal policy of Nigeria.
No, okay, no. Let me also say this. In fact, there was a time the past Ministry of Finance approved some waivers, and it was gazetted. From my own understanding of public policy, once something is gazetted, it is beyond it's law already. But Customs stood against it that we will not allow it to pass. Very powerful then, right?
Yeah.
But a gazette of Nigerian government, once a president signs on a gazette, that gazette is even more than him himself that signed it.
Okay. Ify, in your presentation, I noticed you didn't talk about all the things that you have done, what you have done, some of the challenges directly you have faced, especially with communities, partnerships. Can you just share with us some of the challenges and some of the ways you were able to overcome these challenges and what you think we should do?
Okay, so thank you very much, Garba, for the questions. I just want to also lean into the question you asked Shego. Because we were in this battle together for many years, all of us that are seated on this panel. And one of the things that came through is that Customs is a country on its own. It's the Federal Republic of Nigerian Customs. So what he's saying about us working, we had several forums where we had customs come and try to engage them on getting these waivers done. We presented studies, we presented a best use case analysis, we presented country comparisons, and we still weren't able to get these waivers. And outside of the FCDO study that Shegun talked about, there's been several other studies that have been done that shows that if you give waivers for renewable energy products, this is how much it will grow the GDP of the country. And this is how much faster we can accelerate energy access, especially for the poor rural and the peri-urban communities. For me, the frustrating thing is this idea that people that live in the villages have to wait for 30 years or 40 years or 50 years to get electricity, when it is something they can get in a matter of weeks if a mini grid is deployed. So it's just that frustration that we feel like they don't deserve to have electricity. That's what our policy interactions say to them. And I think that's where the frustration from anybody who's working in this sector comes from. Because we have seen places where mini grids, and this is answering your question now, have been built, and it has completely transformed those communities. You're beginning to see cottage industries. Go ahead.
Even with the tariffs?
Even with the tariffs, they are paying, because they pay higher tariffs than those of us who are using, grid power, disco power. They pay. And because they're now using it to start livelihood things, yes, activities. And they're more committed to paying when they're community-owned and community-built solar. So this is going into your question. At Clean Tech Hub, we consider ourselves, we don't do mini grids, we don't build mini grids, we don't install solar home panels. So we consider ourselves market enablers and market aggregators. So we work with the Sheguns and the Dr. Tolanis to sort of build a system where we can attract investors, where we can partner with government, and where we can define business cases and operating models that can help them, build faster, deploy faster, and engage government in a way that is productive. And so some of the things we've done, for instance, under a program that was run by AECF, also partly supported by FCDO, we were able to get 5 companies seed funding up to, I think, about $4 million USD. Shegun's company was one of those companies.
I was going to mention that.
Yeah, so these are the sort of things we do. We help companies look for money, find money, and we also help them when they're doing project development. Two mini-grid companies, there are 3 or 4 actually, but 2 that we work with very closely. Because one of the things that we non-engineers have realized is that engineers just want to go and build their things. They are not really interested in all of the soft work that goes into deploying projects. So we've had 2 mini-grid companies that have consistently hired us to do customer enumeration, demand simulation, community engagement, all of those things that they don't want to be bothered about. And then also try to do livelihood support, livelihood trainings when their mini-grids have been built. And that you see that sort of partnership also helps, because one of the things that we started to do when we started Clean Tech Hub, even my former organization partner, was to think about how we co-design with communities. And so that it's not just top-down. It's not somebody coming to say you need a mini-grid. It is doing design labs with them for many months, understanding their way of life, and then maybe designing what they think their idea of development is, which always 95% of the time includes electricity. So it's an easier way to penetrate those communities and help them co-design what a mini-grid will be used for. So if you go there, they're designing mini-grids, telling you that they're copper merchants, or that they do small-scale manufacturing, or that they are farmers. So you're designing a mini-grid for agricultural purposes or for small-scale manufacturing purposes, and not just a be-it-all, end-it-all type of mini-grid. So those are some of the things that we do at Clean Technology Hub.
Okay, thank you very much. What I hear from people, maybe a follow-on question for you or Dr. Adaji before I come back to you, sir. what I hear from people is as if when we talk about energy transition, we're trying to move oil and gas away and just say by force, take renewable energy. And I think that's the kind of thing I also hear from the government side. What do we do about that?
Okay, so like I earlier mentioned, it doesn't even make any sense to say move completely to one source of energy. That's my own belief. When you say transition, you are moving, transition is from one stage to another, right? So we believe that gas is that transition fuel that will take Nigeria to the new energy sources that it requires. And secondly, globally, the world is just, there's this buzz about climate change, energy transition. Nigeria's signed up to 2060. I was with some Norwegian team yesterday, and two numbers they gave me was that, for example, they have, for example, they have about 126 distribution companies in a 35 million population. That's one. Secondly, they said the energy transition, is it by year 2035, all the fuel will be 100% powered by, will be electric? Okay, so transition, that's where the world is moving to. And if we don't move, we will get stuck. For example, if nobody is manufacturing cars that is powered by gasoline any longer, what are you going to do? Walk on your feet? Okay, so it's a transition to new sources of energy. And there are many sources coming up now. There's green hydrogen. The world is innovating every day. There are new things coming up. But solar is also one of those that has achieved scale. And I can bet you it's going to be one of the major power sources for Nigeria. So we're not saying put gas aside. No, we're saying energy mix, at least 30. And I also mentioned what is already currently happening. Look, people, it's like water. Water will flow to an area of least resistance. I am telling you right now that some residential homes, some SMEs, some oil majors like Total, why Nigeria is debating, is it renewables? I mean, my house in Lagos has been powered for 10 years completely by solar and battery. My office also in Ikeja is even not connected to national grid. It's powered by renewables. Let others be saying, no, don't move. I've powered over 1,000 barber shops. One of the finances we raised through Clean Tech Hub was to finance SMEs quietly. They are saying, look, petrol is too expensive for them. They would rather do solar to do their barbing than, so water is flowing to this point of resistance. And SMEs are deploying renewables. Mini grid people are paying 180, 150 naira per kilowatt hour because they are using it for product activities. If it is solar that what least resistance will be to, people will flow towards it. That's why people have flown to generators, because it's so easy. You go and buy a generator. I better pass my neighbor. It used to be 10,000 naira. I don't know how much it is now. And then you go to the next filling station, buy fuel of 150, and in 2 hours you have provided power for yourself. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. I'm hearing hydrogen these days.
So, I don't think so increasingly we're seeing a lot of partnership between off-grid and on-grid companies. And so I think that delineation we used to have in the past, that gap is already closing. We're seeing a lot of projects that are being designed with even the discos as part of a consortium that are focused on electrifying using off-grid mechanisms. So I think that is definitely changing. On the new energy mixes that we're seeing, there's now a huge buzz around hydrogen. And a lot of it is being driven by the German government. And I think it's unique, it's innovative, and it's a good time. The only problem that I personally, or Clean Tech Hub has with hydrogen is that it's been designed for export. When we don't have enough energy currently in Nigeria. We want to see what an hydrogen for energy access looks like for domestic use. And so the idea, because this was what got us into this problem in the first place, where we designed an entire oil and gas industry, mainly for export, which is why we're still flaring gas, by the way, because we never built the infrastructure. We never held them accountable to build those infrastructure. And so today, when they are saying availability of gas, non-availability of gas, that's what we're dealing with now. We cannot allow a hydrogen market or hydrogen industry that is solely for exports without actually forcing those people who want to come and mine hydrogen in Nigeria, build the infrastructure for domestic use as well. So while we welcome all of these new technologies, we also have to look out for our own. And that also dovetails into the other question around solar. Oxano is a company that just recently opened up a solar power plant in Nigeria, the first of its kind. So we now have, and this was a plant that cost him close to about $10 million in financing. And he was very heavily supported by some of our kind investors in the energy asset sector. So now that we have a successful use case model like Oxano, because it's not going to be solely able to meet the demand for solar panels in Nigeria, can we get other investors to actually put skin in the game and do like 4 or 5 more plants? Because the other thing we've been pushing around when it comes to energy access is you cannot build an energy independent country that is solely predicated on imports. You can't. We cannot have energy sufficiency if all we're doing is importing panels, batteries, charge controllers, and all of those things. So Oxano has shown us that it is possible. We can build a plant, manufacture things here, and then make it work. And lastly, I will hand over to Dr. Tolani. Sterling Bank has also shown us, because what Shegun said is true. You know, there's a lot of oil and gas companies that are now talking about decarbonization. Now, whether it's just greenwashing or not is another question. But the fact that they have it at the back of their mind, that the world is now looking at how big emitting industries like them are interacting with the whole climate change debate, provides an opportunity for those of us in the renewable energy sector. And this is what Sterling Bank did. When they decided to use solar on their headquarters, from top, wrapped an entire 20-story building with solar panels. So completely went off-grid. And yet they have huge portfolio investments in the oil and gas sector. It is telling you that it is not just an either-or. The market can accommodate everybody. Everybody play where it is your strength. At some point, we will meet in the middle and collaborate. Let me end there.
All right, thank you very much. Sir, you're managing at least 4 or 5 mini-grids. How many people are you serving? Where do you see yourself in the next 1, 2, 3, 4 years? And where do you see other players in the sector the next? Will we be able to meet up with the demand?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So the 4 mini-grids in the 4 communities serve 1,200 households. So, and
households, not people.
And so in Nigeria, we take an household to be about 6 people. Yeah, 6 to 8, but let me even use the conservative of 6, husband, wife, 4 children, which is the average. But what is important was from the get-go, I looked at what they were doing in those communities. What exactly can I do beyond provision of electricity that could catalyze economic development? So one of them, in a particular location, they do oil milling, palm oil milling. So
yes, because I was going to ask you, do you consider productive uses?
Oh, absolutely.
Before you go into a site or something?
In fact, the philosophy of my company is that if there is no economic activity that we could leverage the use of electricity to catalyze development, we will not do it. So that's the philosophy of my company. Yes, it's good for everybody to have access to electricity, but I can tell you, I also did our own independent study, and we did a survey, and we asked people in local communities, if you had 10,000 naira and you needed to pay your children's school fees, buy drug for your sick child, and provide food on the table, would you consider buying electricity and leave those other things? And everybody said no. So, as far as domestic use of electricity is concerned, it's good to have electricity, but those communities would rather put it down on their scale of preference. And so that's the reason that for us, so what we are doing now in that community, we are deploying a 30,000 liter palm oil milling facility for them. And you know the beauty of it is going to possibly take the entire peak generation of solar that I'm going to be having during the day. So where are we expected to go? Well, I told you initially, it took us a long time to get investor. And secondly, because I'm not based in Nigeria, the project has to be commercially viable before I even do it. Because otherwise it's not going to be worth my time and energy. So we are seeing a scenario that things are working the way we wanted it to go, but I'm still not satisfied. I think, and this, Shegun and Ife would agree with me on this. To be able to make more impact and for people to recognize that this is the right thing to do, we need to start thinking of bigger projects. Not the 50 kilowatt, 60 kilowatt that we are currently doing. We should be looking at the right partnerships that could be commercially viable to meet more of the needs. And that will require, and we have the opportunity to do interconnected mini grids, but we need the partners. We need the discos. We need the generators, the GENCOs, because the new act says they must mainstream renewable energy projects. To be honest with you, I would rather prefer to do a 1 megawatt and just inject it to a cluster that already has the capacity to use energy, because take it or leave it, the self-generation of electricity is more expensive than even the renewable energy one, even when you think it's expensive. Because I know all the stress that I have to face to do mini grids. I mean, environmental impact, community engagement, and all those things that are so difficult, and also the stress around meters. I'm happy it was mentioned yesterday, I had to pay 35% levy to the customs to bring in the meters into Nigeria. Then I start to ask myself, why do you give with the right hand and take with the left hand? So bigger projects, we in the renewable energy sector is going to be in the best interest of the country and our interest as well if we start to look at bigger projects, essentially because if we've got investors that we have proven to them that we are reliable, they can get their money back, then they'll be willing to do more projects.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Dr. Victor, I'll come to you now, but Dr. Adaju has to say something, then I'll come to you.
Okay, just to reinforce what you the last point you mentioned.
Yeah.
So I consult for Lagos State currently through the African Development Bank, and the idea is to catalyze the renewables in Lagos. In fact, I think Lagos is another country, let's be honest. Lagos is very bullish about this. The plan is to deploy 1,000 megawatts of decentralized renewables between now and year 2030. And what's the strategy? Of course, residential building, SMEs, but particularly the last model you mentioned. So F1T has catalyzed that. There's an almost 1 megawatt, is 880 kilowatts of solar solution on interconnected mini grid with Ikeja Electric. And they are plugging into the infrastructure of Ikeja Electric, serving the community. So no, they don't have any issue about metering. Ikeja will collect their money. They will share the money.
Is it at the same tariff?
Yeah, I mean, no, it's an agreed tariff between them and
Ikeja.
Yeah, it's differential tariff, right? And then Lagos is not even interested that, look, F1T, this is your facility. Can you power my general hospital at Ekpe? We're discussing that already now. And then we're saying F1T, it's only one you have done. The former commissioner mentioned what we call integrated resource plan. Shows that you can do this in about 7 areas in Lagos. Bring, a proposal. We are not going to fund it, or you fund it, but we'll give you the permit. We'll sign agreement with you. You generate, you plug to the grid, and of course, Cecil, Dr. Patrick Tolani, you're also welcome to Lagos. We can make that facilitation. Thank God you've met Sahara, and then we can say, look, come and generate energy, plug to Lagos is running its own government. While others are waiting to say energy from the grid, Lagos has another crazy, sorry, I'm using that word, plan for it to power its citizen. And we should all, plug into that.
Dr. Victor, before I throw out for questions to the audience, I was just thinking, okay, we're having this meeting in PTDF, and I was just thinking, do we really have like sort of a fund for funding, apart from the Renewable Energy Fund in what do you call it, in REA? Is even the government, does the government even put money, a certain percentage of money in the fund? And don't you think that the proceeds from the oil and gas, or from the gas itself, why will it transition? Because it will not be a good thing for that at the end of the day, Nigeria is still using 504 and other countries are already gone ahead to 508. Don't you think we should already begin to think about how to like put in a certain percentage of whatever we get from the gas proceeds for development of renewable?
Yeah, why not? I mean, the last what I mentioned the last time is I just need to be very clear about some certain things. Renewable energy is the way to go, and no matter what anybody says, it's the way to go. But let's look at practicality in our country today. That is what I'm just saying. For the gas being a transition, yes, the money can be put to build your renewable energy, which is good. However, I did mention that there is a transition path that you could look at. And this transition path is, you need to look at the industry itself. For example, the private sectors, these guys are the ones generating the power. And they're not there to just give, solidarity to community or what. They're there to make profit. So they have to look at themselves to ask some questions. What is the lowest hanging fruit I can go into? And they are looking at their balance sheet. So when we recommend, we need to recommend not only to the government, but private sectors. It's really important. And these private sectors are there to make that balance sheet. As I said, they get their money from the balance sheet. So yes, we could do that. We could take the money, yes, from the gas or oil that we make and start using it for renewable energy. But mind you, in REA, why people feel as mini grid is because REA subsidize up to 75% of the total costs. So if you have a mini grid project that you want to do 100 million, for example, REA could give you as much as 75 million. So it's like they've actually, that's what government, as the government is doing everything they can for that. However, now the question is, where are we on that today? We made progress, fantastic. For the gas part, yes, we need those infrastructures. We need to see how we can take that forward. And at the same time, right, the proceeds we can use that, we call it, to drive renewable energy. But it's not only on gas. We can also make proceeds from low carbon fuels, such as blue methanol, such as blue hydrogen. And I do agree with Ify when she said we shouldn't think about marketing, but it's a two-way thing. Domesticate, example, maybe 70% or 60% of the low carbon fuels, for example, blue hydrogen, blue methanol, could actually be used within the country, while the remaining 30 or 20% can take up, offshore. The proceeds can now be used to now transition towards your renewable energy, because it takes a lot of costs for that renewable energy. So it depends on what we see, on what we see, and do call it the electricity generation transition. So that is the word I normally couch it to say, or power generation transition. How do we get from the transition of gas towards that renewable energy? So it all depends on the business model you want to use. But again, as you rightly said, we could start using the proceeds not only from gas, but from low carbon fuels, through marketing or through the marketing or taking overseas, and use that to start building our transition towards that renewable energy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we go to the audience for their questions. But before I get the people who want to ask the question. I have a question for Ify and Dr. Adaju. My friend cornered me on Sunday when I was talking to him about donor funding for renewable energy and energy efficiency sector, and he told me that he cannot see it. That's what people are saying, that they cannot really see the amount of money that has been put into this sector. Why should they clamor for more?
So is your friend a donor? Is that?
It's not.
So I have a different view on this particular topic. I think, and I know I'm going to offend some donors in this room, so if I do, please forgive me ahead of time. It's not unusual that, the energy asset sector has been donor-driven, because we're dealing with, look at where the projects, especially the mini-grid projects, are being deployed, rural communities, where it's difficult for people who are earning below $1 a day to meet those sort of expectations that it takes to build one mini-grid, right? However, a lot of the announcements we hear from the donors, today you hear 700 billion has been given to Africa, and sometimes they put this Africa because you can't disaggregate and say, oh, which Africa did it go to? Then sometimes you hear 250 million in Nigeria, 750,000 euros, all of these amounts. And every time we hear it, I'm on the phone with Adaju or with Tolani or with Rian President Ayo. Una get the money, he reach you, because we are not seeing it at all, right? So what happens is that there's this money that is said somehow, but you have a whole lot of consultants who, by the way, are not even local, that take a huge chunk of the money. So if it's 750 million, you can be sure that 500 million has gone to consultants, right? And only very little, if at all, goes to local consultants or to local project developers. So we don't see the money. That's why you are not seeing projects. And at a point, there were some of our comrades, we call them comrades in this renewable energy fight, that then decided that they were not going to be engaging the donor agencies. If you invite them for conferences, Shagun knows what I'm talking about. You invite them for conferences, you invite them for donor meetings, they bluntly refused to do. So they started going to Asia to raise money. They started going to Silicon Valley to raise commercial money, and decided that they were not doing this donor thing again because they just felt it was unfair. And I used to work for a quasi-donor agency, so I also used to get the brunt of their anger, But I also, it was a fight. For some of us that were internal, it was also something that we kept on trying to manage. So this money that they are talking about, that is plenty in the renewable energy access, please, before they come and kidnap us, we are not seeing it. None of us have seen it. None of us have the money. None of us are, so I'm speaking for myself. I don't know whether the two of them have seen this type of money, but we don't see the money at all.
Thank you.
All right, let me just, thank you, Ify. You've said absolutely correct. I'm a consultant. So I started as a consultant in this space. So I was also part of the consultants initially. I started with UNDP to support Bank of Industry. And of course, monies for consulting to say, okay, there's this work to be done. You give it to PwC. You give it to one very, what's it called? This foreign company, McKinsey, and it's quoted in dollars. So it chops most of the money. So we came up and said, who? Myself and I remember Alaji Gada. Said, look, this money is, what do we do? We now made the proposal, look, UNDP, agreed, you are paying our salary, you are doing consulting. Let us do something that is out of the box, right? Allocate this amount as innovation fund. Let's identify some companies, give them that money. Let them go and do whatever they like with it. But they will give us proposal. So we put up a call for expression of interest innovation fund, right? And of course, if he does a whole lot of that currently, especially for youth. And then we selected 11 companies, one per state, 11 states, and we threw $30,000 at them. It was a big fight between me and BOI then. They would say, where is this man coming from? So I stood on this, that look, is either we do this or let me just go do something else. So they gave them $30,000. Let me mention 2 or 3 companies that benefited. GVE projects. today should be one of the biggest deployer of mini grids in Nigeria. And he started with, I've forgotten the name of the Egbeke community. That's where he started. He got money from IEEE and the rest and added part of that money to it to test what a mini grid looks like. Today, the guy is a big boy. I mean, so say was there. A few companies, they are doing very well now. So many of us, you know, and I must also mention one development partner that also started something like that. It was GIZ NESP. They put some money. I remember it was about almost 200,000 euros then per company to say, let us test mini grid. If it works, fine. If it doesn't work, that started the revolution of mini grids rollout in Nigeria today. Imagine if they had given that money to consultants to just go and write reports.
TA, as we call it.
Exactly. A TA, technical assistant. Yeah. So the money, we hear the figures, but we want to know that component that is for real project deployments. If you check, it will be very insignificant.
Hello. Okay. So just to add very quickly, my company was one of at least the earliest that got a grant from one of the international organizations, $800,000, right? But I had to appoint a contractor from that country who stayed in that country and earned all the money. But it was my money. All I could do was to approve the invoices to pay them. Yeah. And who did the job? The local staff here in Nigeria were the ones who did the job. So, when you hear those money, even those of us that you find it in our balance sheet, we never saw it. Thank you.
Okay, so questions, please. One, just one. Okay. 2, 3, 4, 5. So we have 5 for now. Let's take the 5 and see if we are able to respond to the 5. Then we can take more before our time is up. So.
Thank you very much. My name is Wumi Iledare, and I want to commend the discussant and the examples that you've given. My question is going to be very brief. I don't want to take much of time, and it has to do with domestication. Domestication of this, I don't call it energy transition. I call it evolving energy landscape. And I'm a supporter of renewable energy as well. But what do you think about thinking you have to kill petroleum for renewable energy to advance within the context of sustainable economic development of Nigeria, within the context of manufacturing energy demand? To what extent do you think, within the current state of things in Nigeria, that renewable energy should be the driver?
Thank you, sir. There was one person here. Okay, let's take care, then we'll go there. Please, straight to the point, as our daddy has done.
Yeah, thank you very much, sir. Well, obviously, when people are talking about renewable, the most visible one they'll be talking about is solar, hydro, and so on and so forth. Yes, but there are other sources of renewable energy that oftentimes when people are discussing like this, they don't talk about. One of it is use of biomass, either as biogas or combusting it as just like you do gas or coal in existing facilities. So whatever we are talking about, if you are going to make maybe proposal for future, so I think it would be good to capture that one too.
Okay, sir.
Because with that, we don't need to do so much work.
Thank you very much, sir. Yes, I'll see. This one here, then here last.
Thank you very much, sir. They call me Chioke from North South Power Company Limited.
So go ahead, sir.
we have listened attentively for 3 days. And this is the last session, so my question covers all. I know that at the end of these sessions, a position paper, or call it a communique, will be produced. Now my question is, who do we hold responsible to drive the implementation of resolutions that are taken in this assembly? I ask this question because if I saw that in 10 years' time, we don't assemble here to propound new theories, why resolutions taken at this session have not been implemented. So we need to know who, so that from time to time we chat the person up and ask how far the implementation.
Thank you very much.
This
sir.
way we'll make progress. Thank you.
Sir. The last person over there. Where? Oh, there's one here. Okay, I didn't even see.
Thank you. My name is Abel Gaya from Clean Technology Hub. I was wondering, Dr. Patrick Tolani was talking about the high transaction costs relative to the small size of individual projects in the mini-grid sector. And I know that, I think last year, September, there was consultation by NEC on seeing if it's possible to have regulatory approval for a portfolio of mini-grid sites rather than per sites. And I know that Cross-Boundary Energy Access was experimenting with aggregating mini-grid sites, so getting financing for a large portfolio of sites rather than financing per site. So I was wondering, but I've not heard anything since then about these two approaches that are trying to scale the mini-grid sector. So I was wondering if any of you have any information.
Thank you. I think that's all right. So we respond in 2 minutes. And while we are responding, I think there are 2 things or 3 things we didn't talk about. One of the things is other sources of energy, because it looked as if we were talking about only solar, then youth, then cooking. So maybe while responding, maybe we could just in 2 minutes so that we can wrap up.
Go ahead. Yeah, please, let me respond to those other sources. The truth is, energy mix is the way to go, even within the renewable energy sector. And so within that domain, we even have small hydros. I mean, Niger State is a state where nobody should be energy poor at all, because they have most of the viable rivers coming as outlets of the River Niger that have a lot of potential for energy generation. My company was involved recently in carrying out feasibility studies for 14 rivers in a very tiny country called Congo Brazzaville. And we bidded for two of the rivers, and each of those rivers would generate, even with low head, close to 5 to 10 megawatts to serve different localities. So I think we shouldn't miss out from the opportunities that we have from small hydro. Another one is biomass that you mentioned, sir. Biomass is becoming more and more important, especially even for those of us in the mini-grid sector. And why am I saying that? Most of our mini-grids are hybrid. Hybrid in the sense that we have to have diesel backup. I've just submitted today an application in the UK to see how we could partner with people with poultry and use poultry waste.
Instead of diesel.
Yes, poultry waste to generate gas and supply to some of our mini grids. Because the truth of the matter is, I must be honest with you, with the cost of diesel, I think most of the mini grids are likely
to shut down,
going to either shut down or be underperforming.
All right.
So we need energy mix. And I'm hoping that we are going to be successful in that experiment, that we could use, because in those in those rural communities, they have different sorts of agricultural waste. And we started this with my company providing just a small grant to somebody in one of the states to do a mini biodigester for cooking purpose, and it worked. And that's why we are now moving forward to see whether we could do something bigger. And if it works, then we can cascade that lesson to other developers in the rural areas.
Thank you very much, sir.
Let me just quickly cite
2 minutes.
3 examples. One, there is a mini grid at the outskirts of Abuja by Ajima Farms, a lady. Developed a mini grid using biomass. That's number 1. Number 2, there's one of the members of RIAN who does what we call both solar and small wind, mill, right? Blue Camel, a combination of that, right? Number 3, one of the winners, I mentioned 11 winners in BOI UNDP. It's called Quintas Energy. He's based in Akure. I mean, a great guy in biomass, all right? So there are pockets of those, technologies that has been deployed. But of course, the numbers from solar is much more, because it's like solar, you can deploy solar anywhere. But for biomass, you need to go to a place where there is resource. And Lagos is also considering a massive waste-to-energy power plant at Olusosun. Olusosun has about 2.1 metric tons of waste every year. It can generate 5 megawatts to power about 100,000 inhabitants within about 5-kilometer radius, and Lagos is exploring that. So that is coming up. And finally, to the prof. Thank you so much, sir. We're not. The reality right now is maybe like the evolution theory, where things are evolving and changing by itself almost naturally. I probably won't say Nigeria should shut down fossil fuel, or it's still relevant. I still drove a vehicle yesterday, and I was still brought by a vehicle here today that was powered by gasoline. So maybe I won't have a choice, but gradually you see the world is moving to some of those new technologies. The kind of cars we are driving today are not the kind of cars they drove 100 years ago. So it's evolution, and gradually that's what we're going to get into. But gas.
But economic development.
For economic development, yes. Gas is relevant. It's transition energy. But the real fossil fuel like petrol, diesel, and I don't know how long their lifespan is.
After all, some countries don't have that, and they are still surviving.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
100 years.
So let me also lean on what Segun is saying to Prof. We adore Prof, and it's somebody that we read very assiduously whenever he writes or puts his thoughts to paper. But Prof, I'll also agree with Segun, because I don't think there's anybody in the renewable energy sector that is saying that they are going to get rid of fossil today. We had last week the biggest e-mobility conference that has happened in West Africa. Right. My company hosted it in Lagos. And we saw indigenous e-mobility, 2-wheelers and 3-wheelers that were coupled together here, all completely not using diesel or petrol, completely using batteries and charging stations. And a lot of it is being deployed in the north. So there's a whole, especially Maiduguri. So we need to do a case study on Maiduguri. The fact that a lot of the 3-wheelers that are being used a lot of it in the north are from people that are in Borno State and in Maiduguri as well. And so you can see, like Segun says, that there's an evolution happening, right? It's happening. Our own entrepreneurs here are trying to catch up and are being part of that business and ecosystem, so that when there is now a full energy transition, we will not be left behind. One of the things I'm realizing as I do more global work is that the transition will happen. It is not whether Nigeria or Africa wants it. It will happen. And it is specifically because we are not the ones holding the pockets that it would happen rapidly and at a pace where we might be caught napping and not able to catch up. So that's the answer that I'll give to that.
Thank you very much. Dr. Victor, final words, 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. So my final word is this, that I think for all of us, deep collaboration and partnership to drive this process is really important. whether it's renewable energy, whether it's fossil fuel, whatever kind of energy fuel that we have to drive our country, Nigeria. And I think that's the center. The center is, it's not about what other countries are trying to do, but what is practical in our country and what is useful to our people and what we ourselves can come together as one to drive the process, whether it's gas or renewable energy or whatever energy mix that we want to bring in. Let it be something that gives everyone joy, basic and productive means. I think that's just going to be the my final thoughts on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, panelists. Thank you very much, everyone. We have come to the end of our session. You can meet them anytime. And if he works so much also on youth inclusion and women, so you can also meet her to discuss with her and anybody here. They are always available.
If you're trying to start up a renewable energy company, please come and talk to us. We'll be happy to support and help. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. They say the end of the matter is better than the beginning. I can see that we really had a very robustful conference. And initially, the ladies were reacting, but I can see we were able to chip in some of our ladies, and they gave the best. Clap for the ladies, please. Honestly, I would say I'm just an ordinary Nigerian that is concerned, but being in this conference for